Thank you all for coming. Just to get you started, back in 1974, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office responded to a skeletal remains of a person in the mangroves in what was known as a burnt bridges area on A1A. I'm going to start off by saying that the identification of Susan Gale Poole was made possible with the assistance of Othram Incorporated, which is a private forensic DNA laboratory that utilizes proprietary method called forensic grade genome sequencing to build a DNA profile from the most challenging forensic evidence. In December of 2021, they contacted me and said that they would be able to possibly do genealogy on old cases. It was decided by the sheriff's office and my supervisors we would send up the unknown remains from this girl from 1974. Thanks to Othram, they were able to identify her, build a profile, and in March they gave me the name of the mother and siblings of the Susan Gale Poole. She was tied up, it appeared to be tied up in the mangroves with wire to a tree. She was a skeletal remains, totally nothing left of her except the bones. Back then, the detectives did a job. They didn't have any of this new technology, so they have FDLE flyers they sent out with her dental records, and nothing ever came back. She remained unidentified. In 2015, we got DNA, put her in the National Center for Missing Persons, Unidentified Persons, and we still never got a match. We tried this new technology, and like I said, we were able to get a match, and she was identified as Susan Gale Poole, born in February the 12th, 1957. She lived in what was known as the Pan American Trailer Park in Broward County, which is off of Andrews Boulevard, just north of Cypress Creek, with her mother, father, and several brothers. The mother is still alive. I would request that you do not try to contact her. She's in her late 90s, early 90s. Anyway, I do have a spokesperson who will talk if you want to interview a family member. She did report her missing back in 1972. She disappeared right before Christmas. Nobody knew where she went. Her clothes, pocketbook, were still at an apartment that she was staying at. So what I'm looking for now is the possibility of locating some of her friends that she had back then in the trailer park. And I'll give you a few names that if somebody out there knows them, please have them contact me. One of her friends was a Julie Hunt. Another friend was a Michelle Williamson. And another friend, Greg Anderson. I found several of her friends, talked to all her family members, and they all said she just disappeared. Back in the 70s, 72, there was a gentleman by the name of Gerard Schaeffer who was a serial killer. If you look him up, he lived in Broward County, in the area where Susan Poole lived. He also was a police officer in Wilton Manor and got terminated from there and was a sheriff's deputy in Martin County, where he got arrested for kidnapping two girls, taking him out on A1A, and tying him up in the mangroves. He was convicted for killing several girls that were also tied up in the mangroves. But there's a book out on him, and he's deceased now. He was killed in prison in 1996. But back in 1974, the detectives working this case also developed another suspect who lived in Michigan But based on the fact now that I know that she disappeared in 72, this person is pretty well eliminated as a suspect. Any questions?
What's the correct spelling for Jared Schaeffer?
Well, you got me off guard there. It's Gerard Schaeffer, and I think it's Schaffer.
Any idea how many people that you do know that he did admit to, or certain that he killed? And
He got sentenced for two that were kidnapped out of Broward County. Back in 1974, they did a search warrant on his house in Broward County. He was living with his mother. They obtained driver's licenses, jewelry, other items belonging to various victims.
How has her family's response been now that her remains have been identified? Have they spoken with you, you would think?
Well, the family was happy. I mean, to know what happened. I mean, it's been a long time waiting to see what happened to their sister. The one sister, her sister Patty Poole, who lives in Broward County, she said you could contact her. The rest of the family would request that you don't contact them. But Patty's number, and I'll give it to you, is 954-825-8789.
Do you know, are there other cases of women similar, aside from Ms. Poole, in terms of being tied up in the mangroves?
Yeah, was his MO.
Yes, I mean, he was convicted of two. Any idea?
Well, there was two plus, and I'd have to go back through it. I haven't reviewed all his cases, but there was two. There's some other missing girls. There's another missing girl in Broward County that the Broward Sheriff's Office believes that he did, but they can't. We've never located her body.
Okay.
We originally thought when we got together that possibly Susan was their victim, but DNA ruled that out.
Detective, you mentioned 3 friends that you were looking for at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be able to explain to us the process of kind of eliminating other friends and why these 3 and kind of their connection you believe they may have?
Well, I interviewed the family. I also interviewed 2 friends, one of her friends, and they told me these were other friends of hers. What I'm trying to do is piece together her last week's, what her activities were. She did not go to school. Her mother said she had dropped out of school. So I need to find out what her activities were. She had any additional friends, anybody in particular she was seeing, and just try to piece together her last days. And I figure I found the male friends, but they're not, sometimes I guess girls don't, I don't know. I don't want to get sexist and say girls don't talk to their boys, but I mean, I'm looking for somebody that maybe she confided in more, because she didn't really confide in these people. So that's why I'm looking for Julie Hunt and, like I said, Michelle Williamson. And these people all lived in the Pan American trailer park. Excuse me. And the trailer park is still there. I went to the trailer park, and these people do not reside there anymore.
And you said she had left there and was living somewhere else. Do you know any of them?
She was going back and forth and staying with a friend in Wilton Manors.
But at the time that the suspect was a police officer then?
Yes, he was active back then. He got arrested in Martin County at the end of '72. He was out on bail during that time and was convicted in the early part of 1973.
So when she went missing in '72, he was already in Martin County?
Yeah, he had been working in Martin County, but he was still living in Wilton Manors.
I see.
Or not Wilton Manors, I'm sorry, Broward County.
You said the trailer park was on Andrews and where?
It's on North Andrews, north of Cypress Creek. It's called Pan American.
What are your next steps in hoping to close this case? How do you go about closing a case like this?
Well, if I can talk to some friends, I may never be able to close the case as far as that goes. I mean, Gerard Schaeffer is the best suspect due to the location, the fact that she's in the mangroves, that she's tied up in the mangroves. He was active back then. He was a Wilton Manors police officer when she was living there. His MO was to pick up young girls hitchhiking, and back then, from her other friends, they told me that she did hitchhike. So everything kind of fits that way, but, you know, I don't have any physical evidence to link him to it.
When she was found, can you tell us, were there bullet holes in her clothing, anything like that? That you believe
No,
was
there was
the-
no, her clothing was pretty well deteriorated by then.
Okay.
And there was no physical evidence or trauma to the body that the
Okay.
anthropologist could find.
And are you working with the Martin County Sheriff's Office Department at this time in terms of the investigation?
No, I'm working with the Broward Sheriff's Office because, from what I understand, they may still have some of the evidence that was collected from Gerard Schaeffer's house to see if my family could identify any of the jewelry.
How long would it take a body that is put where it was found for it to become just bones? So that body must have been there for quite some time. before
According to
it
the
was found.
anthropologist, we found it in June. They said she could have been there for a year and a half or better. So that would take it right back to the time period that she disappeared.
Do you know if Mr. Schaeffer or Ms. Poole really have any ties to Palm Beach County, or was that just, what did she have?
You mean Schaeffer?
Yeah.
The only thing I know Schaeffer did back then was travel between here and Martin County. So I'm not sure if he did or not, and there's nobody left to talk to, reference to if he was familiar with Palm Beach County. But I'm thinking he's pretty familiar with A1A because that's where he took his victims.
The sister, it was Patty, you said? What was the last name?
Patty, P-A-T-T-I. Last name is Poole, P-O-O-L-E.
Have you used a commercial DNA service like this before? What are your thoughts on this? As a,
One of my thoughts on it,
investigative
I think it's a great investigative technique, and the sheriff's office, we're probably going to do a lot more. And there's other techniques out there that I learned from this one that we're going to be trying out on some of the older cases. I know that the National Center for, I'm sorry, I get them mixed up. The NamUs and them are going to, aren't they going to pay? They're paying for a couple of our other unidentified to have DNA done at Othram. So we're just getting started with this new technology. And thanks to the sheriff's office and the sheriff being very progressive, I'm looking forward to doing a lot more cases.
Do you know, is the trailer park in Fort Lauderdale, or is it Broward County or Wilton Manors?
Well, it's north of Wilton Manors. It's, get off Cypress Creek, 95, go west of Andrews, make a right, go north, and it's right up there on the left-hand side.
There's a movie theater right there, I think.
Well, there's a diner right there at the intersection of Cypress and North Andrews. It's really good.
I'm sorry, you said back in 2015 there was some DNA sample that was not a match. Do you recall what you were saying?
Well, back in 2015,
Yes.
we did DNA on her
Uh-huh.
so we could put her in CODIS in the National Center.
Okay.
And then the missing person from Broward County, we personally checked that to make sure, and it wasn't her.
Okay, so there was no match?
There was no match, no.
Okay, and then for this case, did they use DNA from the family then, or how?
No, in December, they contacted me, told me that they had great success with degraded and old DNA.
Okay,
We decided to send off the evidence, the skeletal remains. I'm not going to go into all the details of that. We sent off her skeletal remains, part of it, and they did DNA. They called me up and sent me an email, and they sent me an email with the mother's name and all the siblings' names. They said this should be the mother and these should be siblings. I called up, I found a number for one of the family members. I called him up, and he said, yeah, we're missing my sister from 1972.
what was your reaction to that?
And then I got elimination DNA from the mother. It was compared and positively identified as mother-daughter.
And when did you get involved with this case?
I'm
When
sorry.
did you get involved with this case in terms of your history?
I've known about this case for years. I was the cold case sergeant until I retired in 2010. And I was well aware of this case, and when I came back in 2013, I kind of picked it up again and started playing with it.
Oh, really?
The independent DNA company, how do they match the parents, the siblings? Where do they get their samples from?
You know, I didn't ask them. They have their own databases. Once they got the DNA from Susan, they entered it into some database and came back and told me this is the mother and the siblings. And then I got elimination from the mother to confirm it, sent it back out to them, and they confirmed that Susan was the daughter.
What would be that missing link you need just to tie Schaeffer to this case?
Well,
in a nutshell?
if somebody, I mean, I don't know, maybe one of these friends can tell me whether she hitchhiked down in that area, whether she ever talked to any Wilton Manors police officers, did she hang around? I know that that she did go to a 7-Eleven in Wilton Manors that her brother worked at, and that the Wilton Manors police officers did frequent that, looking for people smoking marijuana and different things. So is it possible she met him there? I don't know. Or was she just hitchhiking and got picked up by somebody?
But at this stage, physical evidence is it's almost impossible. Physical evidence.
On this case, I'm going to be honest, I don't have any physical evidence to link him to her, no. I just need, you know, it would just be circumstantial evidence that if you could put together to show that possibly she was connected with it. Other than the MO that she's in the mangroves and she's tied up in the mangroves. I mean, not many people were doing that back in the 70s except him, but, you know.
Wouldn't that some circumstantial evidence be almost better than, yeah, she was hitchhiking?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if I could put something together, it would be good. That's why I need to find her friends. That's why I need to find Julie Hunt, Greg Anderson, and Michelle Williamson.
Can you spell those names for us just to be
This is all, I don't really know the spellings, to be honest with you, other than Julie is simple, Hunt, H-U-N-T, Craig Anderson, A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N, and Michelle Williamson. It could be Michelle Morello now, and she possibly lives up in the Palatka, Florida area.
You have the correct spelling for Ms. Poole's middle name, Gail?
Gale, G-A-L-E.
If we wanted to get a general location of where she was found, what would that be? Like in the you said mangroves, but where?
It's called Burnt Bridges area. It's up in North Palm Beach on A1A, and don't ask me what it looks like today, because I haven't been up there
It would
in a
be
while.
kind of right north of Singer Island, if you're familiar with that area, MacArthur State Park up in that area there. Think about how that area looked back in the 70s.
Yeah,
But
back
that
in the
area over
70s,
there.
there was nothing there. I mean, you know. But you got to read up on Gerard Schaeffer. He was kind of a, really,
Yeah, Google him, there's a lot of material out there. There's
Yeah.
actually a documentary on him out there.
and there's some books on him out there too that people wrote. I read his book years ago, but I don't remember everything in it.
Can you tell us the family's reaction to the news of this?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell us the family's reaction to the news of this?
I mean, they were happy. I mean, you know. And like I said, they reported her missing back in 1972. And I think the important thing is that also needs to get out there is that people like this family, they reported her missing back in 1972. And then it was never really followed up on afterwards. And they never went back to the sheriff's office or anybody. Because once you report somebody missing, if it's not documented every year, they're dropped out of FCIC and NCIC. They have to be, well, you can't keep people in there forever. And the problem is if the police department that enters them doesn't verify every year that they're still missing, they drop them out of the system. Because if you didn't, you can imagine there'd be millions and millions of people in the system that have been back home or found or not still missing. But if you have a loved one that's missing and you haven't heard from them, from the police, and you know they're still missing under suspicious circumstances or something, then you need to find out the agency that they were reported missing to. And
Oh, so that's why it didn't show up in 2015? Because she'd already been dropped out when you had the DNA match?
well, I don't,
No, you're mistaken. We didn't have a DNA match in her in 2015.
But there was a DNA sample, but
Yes.
nothing came back as a match.
Correct.
because nobody ever, after they reported her missing in 72,
Yeah.
nothing was ever done after that. Nobody ever went back and collected DNA to be put into the system, because they probably listed it. And you got to realize, we're going back into the 70s. Things were a lot different back in the 70s. If she was a runaway, she had been reported as a runaway before, they could have just classified her as a runaway, and after, they just didn't do anything, because they figured she ran away.
Had she run away before? She was caught?
She did run away once before,
Okay.
you know.
So she's not she's never listed in the Center for Missing and Exploited Children?
No,
Okay.
no, she was never on the radar, never entered into anything. I don't even know if she was entered back in 1972. We could never find any police reports in the sheriff's office or any place where she is ever reported missing. And that's how we miss these things. And you know, and the family has to speak up. I mean, if you got a missing loved one and you've never been contacted, then you need to get a hold of somebody and see if they'll put your DNA in the system. Because if there's somebody out there, we like to get them identified. And I know back when I was the cold case sergeant, we got every unidentified we had sent samples out to the University of North Texas for DNA to be put into the system. We even exhumed bodies that had been buried to get their DNA to send it off to Texas. The sheriff's office is very proactive, and we try to do everything and put everything out there and put our unidentified in the system. And like I said, we're now going to do more of the genealogy on our unidentified, and we're going to maybe do some more on our active cases, our cold cases. So, you know, as sheriff's office is proactive, we've got good people here, we've got hardworking people here, and our sheriff is out there to get cases solved and do what we need to do to get it done. Okay?
Can you
I just
say
wanna
spell
mention-
your name for us, Detective?
I also want to mention that we have on our website, you'll see an unidentified area over there of all of our missing people. And also you'll see, we've done a few documentaries and podcasts. So please go to our website and you'll be able to see some work that Detective Springer has done along with Detective Cogburn
Yeah.
and some other members of their team.
Yeah, I was going to say Detective Cogburn and our media relations people have started a podcast on all our identified, and, you know, like I say, we're very proactive here. We want to get these
In
people
some of our cold
identified.
cases, you know, Detective Springer works on Rachel Hurley, he works Christy Luna, he works Randy Gorenberg, and a slew of others. So you'll find all of those on our website, along with the other ones that Detective Cogburn has also done, and documentaries and podcasts.
Our goal is to get these people unidentified back home to where they belong,
There you go.
and get the families the answers that they need.
And please say what you always say, I just need that one bit of evidence to finish that puzzle.
That's all we
I
need,
that
yeah.
one name so I
Just the one
can
name,
follow
and yeah, and
through.
we can solve the puzzle. And don't be afraid to call in, and if you want to remain anonymous, you can remain anonymous. We just like I said, we want to get these people identified and get them back to their families and get answers for their families. That's our goal.
So has her remains been sent back to the family then?
What's that?
Has Ms. Poole's remains been sent to the families, at least some of them?
We're making arrangements now,
Okay.
yeah.
A name and title again, spell it.
Oh, it's Detective William J. Springer, S-P-R-I-N-G-E-R.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming all the way up from Broward and.
Yes,
Of course,
thank you for
thank
coming
to
up.
our
I
locals
appreciate
who
you all
come as
coming
well.
up, because I definitely want to get this out down there, because that's where she lived, and that's where she was missing from.